Good evening and welcome. Tonight we're going to be going over the history and geography of Jamaica. Jamaica, as you can see, is an island. It's located in the Caribbean. And let me show you something in this book. We'll flip through it after I go over its history. But let me see, I left a little post-it. There it is. Take this off. Give you some sounds. Jamaica is located, as you can see, in the Caribbean Sea, just north of Cuba and just west of Haiti. So yeah, it's right in there. It's the third largest island in the Caribbean besides Cuba and Hispaniola. And as you can see, the capital city is Kingston. Let me move this back so I can show you the big map. Jamaica is actually an incredibly mountainous country. There's lots of different mountain ranges going all through it. There's quite a few little valleys here and there, but it's very dominated by its mountains. Starting, I guess, left to right, I suppose, we'll start over here in this area that's known as the Cockpit Country. You can see right there. It's called that because the rocks here are karst. And if you've seen any of my videos on Eastern Europe, I mentioned karst a few times. Karst is kind of like a limestone, and it's very soft. When it rains, it's more likely to develop cave systems. So it's called cockpit because over the years, the rain and the weather has created little caves and holes and things in the mountains. Also over here, you can see the Dry Harbor Mountains go over here. The Mocho Mountains go down this way. Then it gets very mountainous over in this section. These are the Blue Mountains you can see here, with the highest peak right here called Blue Mountain Peak. There's also the John Crow Mountain Range that goes over here. The Rio Grande River kind of splits them in two right there. And then, of course, Jamaica is covered in lovely beaches. Apparently the nicest one is over here. There's lots of little rocky crags along the north here. Toward the south, it's a little more luxurious. There's also lots of coral reefs around here. And right here you can see Kingston Harbor with the capital city of Kingston right here. And right here you can see Port Royal, which we'll talk about in its history for a second. But yeah, you can obviously tell that this is the more populated area. There's Spanish Town and Portmore just outside of Kingston. But Montego Bay is also very populous, mostly for tourism purposes. St. Anne's Bay would be another big city, but there's quite a lot. Jamaica's incredibly populated. When I show you the population map, it's pretty much all purple. It's very, very populated, even though there are parts that are super incredibly forested and just really beautiful. There's some areas that still look really untouched. I'll show you Dunn's River Falls in the book. It's really pretty. I'm looking at that on the map. But there's also lots of little islands around here. They're very teeny tiny, and I don't think they're even inhabited. They're super small. But yeah, Jamaica obviously is a Caribbean country, so it's that gorgeous Caribbean relaxing climate. And yeah, I think everyone knows what Jamaica looks like and what its geography is like. But I was very surprised researching this, just how mountainous it is. There's so many mountains in Jamaica. But with that out of the way, let's talk about the history of Jamaica. It's a really fascinating one. So Jamaica did not have any human life on it until, well, actually, there was one early group that was on here between 4000 and 1000 BCE, but that's literally all we know about them. They didn't leave anything behind. We don't know what happened to them. We don't know what they were called. And there was another culture on here known as the Redware culture because they left behind red pottery. They were here around 600 CE, but again, we don't really know what happened to them. But we do know that the Taino people came around the year 800 CE. and would become very dominant on this island at its height. Jamaica had a population of 60,000 Taino indigenous peoples. And of course, with that population, they had a very flourishing society with chiefs and politics and what have you. Christopher Columbus was the first European to sight the island. He landed up in the north here in 1494. He came back by accident in 1503 when he was shipwrecked and had to live on Jamaica for a year. The Spanish first attempted to settle on Jamaica in 1509, but it was pretty unsuccessful. All the Spanish got sick. But by 1534, they were in full force on here. They established what is now known as Spanish Town. They obviously didn't call it that at its founding, but that was the capital. And of course, they set up plantations and imported kidnapped people from Africa to work as slaves on their plantations. But it was not a very populous island, especially compared to Spain's other colonies and plantation settlements in the Caribbean and South America and Central America. So Britain saw an opportunity. In 1655, they started to invade the island. And by 1660, they had pretty much captured the whole island. They had the help of the Maroons. So let me put this down. The Maroons there's still a Maroon population on the island. The Maroons were people who were brought over as slaves who escaped. And they went out into the mountains and formed their own societies. So they cooperated with the British, of course, to kick the Spanish out. The Spanish all fled, and they left behind all of their slaves, who became part of the Maroon colonies, or communities, is what I meant to say. But the British, of course, stayed. By the 1670s, they had set up a huge sugarcane plantation operation here, and of course they imported more kidnapped peoples from Africa to work on these plantations. They also brought indentured workers from Ireland as well. Later they'd bring people from India and China, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So in order to protect this land from the Spanish, they pretty much just relied on pirates, and especially down here in Port Royal became a pirate haven. If you've ever been on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland, the little part when you go through the town, that's based on Port Royal. Pretty much a lawless pirate ran town. All yoho and everything. And these pirates, I did a whole video on the history of pirates. I talked about them a lot, but they were pretty ruthless. They did some nasty tactics to rob the Spanish and fight the Spanish, what have you. But in 1692, there was a huge earthquake on the island, and there was a big tsunami. And as you can kind of see here, this is like a long peninsula, and Port Royal was on the very tip. So there was a big tsunami, and it just wiped out the entire town. You can still see parts of it underwater. And of course, it's the Caribbean, so the water's crystal clear, so you can just look down and see all the little buildings that are still under the water. But that was the end of the pirate domination on Jamaica. But the island was still going because of the sugarcane plantations. And there were so many slaves brought over, tens of thousands of slaves brought over. A lot of them escaped thanks to the Maroons, and they joined the Maroon community. There was a big one over here in Cockpit Country. They were the Leeward Maroons, and there was another in this community. They were the Windward Maroons. They went to war with the British in 1728. It was the first Maroon War. It ended in a stalemate. The British were not prepared for guerrilla warfare. And they just agreed to let the Maroons stay in their communities in the forest and let them do their thing. The British were going to do their thing. There was a couple huge slave rebellions throughout Jamaica's history, but the first big one was in 1760. It was known as Tacky's War. And then In 1795, the Second Maroon War broke out, when some Maroons were like captured and beaten by the British. So they said, that's enough. It was a bad one, but the Leeward Maroons eventually lost and they were kicked out of the country. They were sent to Nova Scotia. And if you've seen my video on Sierra Leone, you know that the Africans sent to Nova Scotia were eventually sent to Sierra Leone, where their ancestors still live today. In 1807, the slave trade was abolished, but not the institution of slavery. They started to give them a couple rights here and there. The most important one being the right to practice religion and to study Christianity. In 1831, it wasn't a war, but it's called the Baptist War. It was just like a huge riot. There was a preacher named Samuel Sharp, and he wanted to peacefully protest for slaves' rights and emancipation from slavery. So he said, this year, none of the slaves are going to work on Christmas Day. But that kind of snowballed into like a huge riot, and people went around and burned down plantations during Christmas, blah, blah, blah. It was pretty rough, but they captured Samuel Sharp and executed him, and there was such an outrage over in Britain that event led to the emancipation of the slaves on Jamaica in 1838. Like I said, the British brought in indentured servants from India and China to kind of replace the slaves for the most part. There's still a very large Indian and Chinese population on Jamaica. The black population of Jamaica, of course, still face lots of discrimination and extreme poverty as well. That led in 1865 to the Morant Bay Rebellion. That was led by Paul Bogle. That rebellion was put down so brutally that, again, the British over in England were appalled by this, and so it led to Jamaica becoming a crown colony in 1866. Just so there could be more of a political structure here in Jamaica, more order, you know. By the early 1900s, there was a really interesting movement, the waves and repercussions of which still exist today. They were led by a man named Marcus Garvey. He pushed for a lot of political change for Black Jamaicans. He was a Pan-Africanist, part of the Back to Africa movement, and his work basically inspired Rastafarianism in a way, which is a religion that is predominantly practiced on Jamaica. We'll probably get into it in another video. Actually, yeah, I know we're going to get into another video later this week. I'll explain more then, but just know that. Marcus Garvey was a huge inspiration to the Black Jamaicans and the Jamaican population in general. And like I said, his work is still resonating in Jamaica today. He was extremely influential, but by 1944, a new House of Representatives was established in Jamaica, and it established two main political parties, which are still the two predominant political parties today. They would be the JLP and the PNP. The JLP was led by Alexander Bustamante. The PNP was led by Norman Manley. In 1958, Jamaica joined the Federation of the West Indies, as sort of like steps toward independence. They eventually left that so they could achieve full independence on August 6, 1962. Jamaica still remained a Commonwealth of Britain, which is like this weird club of countries that used to be British colonies. So there's still, like, Queen Elizabeth II is like the reigning monarch of Jamaica, but Jamaica has its own prime minister and government, what have you. They have a governor general that rules in the Queen's place on Jamaica. It's like they're a part of Great Britain, but they're not part of Great Britain. It's a weird little club, basically. The 1960s, the economy on Jamaica started to really boom, especially in terms of mining and tourism, of course. Jamaica is still a heavily tourist island nation today. But that was really marred by political conflicts between the JLP and PMP, to the point where eventually gangs formed for these political parties that would roam the streets and fight people and do very violent acts in the name of their political parties. Over the years, the parties have swapped power back and forth. As you know, one dominates the elections, and then there's economic crises, what have you, and then people vote for the other one. They're dominant, and then there's economic crises. Same thing happens in a lot of democracies around the world, so it's not terribly unusual or concerning at this point in the world, but that's basically where Jamaica is today. They had an election in 2020. Andrew Holness is the current prime minister. He's from the JLP. And yeah, Jamaica is, of course, beautiful and so gorgeous. Let me show you some pictures in here. Let's look through. This is always my favorite part. I love to show you pictures. Jamaica. Look at this guy. He's rafting on the river. Papayas. Playing on the beach, of course. Here's a political map of Jamaica, and look, this is interesting. You can see this is a maroon town, Nanny Town. Nanny being one of the predominant maroon leaders during the First Maroon War. They're tallying bananas. Bananas replaced sugar as like the main export crop after Jamaica distanced itself from Britain. This is the market. And it says he's preparing for a hurricane. And Jamaica's in that hurricane zone. This guy's got some coconuts. This is Hurricane Sandy hitting Jamaica. The aftermath of hurricanes and cleanup from hurricanes. Look how gorgeous. So this is what I mean by that tropical, untouched beauty. It's so lovely. There's that map I showed you before. This must be, that's Blue Mountain Peak. And here's the physical map. You can see all of the mountainous areas up here. Here's some of the karst landscape. And this is on the Black River. That's the largest river in Jamaica. This is Dunn's River Falls. Isn't that beautiful? So, so gorgeous. People like to stand there and let the water rush over their feet. I'm sure it's so relaxing. This is the Martha Brae River. You can raft down it. The Blue Mountains. You can kind of see why they're called the Blue Mountains from this photo. Here is a statue of Samuel Sharp. And let's see what this is. I wonder if this is Spanish Town. Yep, Spanish Town. Back in the day, of course. There's a parrot. And the national bird of Jamaica. This is the steamer-tail hummingbird. This is a mongoose. The British imported mongooses onto Jamaica to fight off the rats that were brought on. And of course the mongoose population exploded, and they're a menace today, even though they're super cute. There's a sweet little manatee floating around. And there's a baby sea turtle crawling toward the ocean. These are Jamaican iguanas. Very nearly went extinct, brought back from the brink. National symbols. Let's see, this is the less showy flower. Oh, I see. It is the less showy flower from the guayacum tree. That is the national flower. I read that wrong. Alright, here's a mangrove forest along the coast. And this is in the Blue and John Crow Mountains National Park. This guy's looking at some Taino ruins. There's lots of cave paintings and things from the Taino. Columbus's second voyage. He went there to Cuba and then came around the island, exploring it. and his fourth voyage to Panama, it says. Port Royal, all the ships there you can see. And here is Morgan, Henry Morgan, there we go. Famous pirate. These are some buccaneers fighting the Spanish. And this is Port Royal being swallowed up by the sea. This is the triangle trade of, goods, bringing goods down there and bringing slaves back that way. This is a really beautiful picture of the Maroons living in the woods. And this is Queen Nanny. She's on their money. She's considered a national hero of Jamaica. We'll hear more about them in another video. And some Africans being worked on the sugarcane plantations. This is Mary Seacole. She was a famous nurse from Jamaica back when black women were not really allowed to be nurses. And this is the Morant Bay Rebellion. There's Marcus Garvey, looking very official here. Very predominant leader. And here's Alexander Bustamante. I should have mentioned he became the first prime minister of Jamaica. There's Norman Manley. And this is Michael Manley with Fidel Castro, his buddy. These guys are voting, and you can see there are police here to maintain peace, make sure that the election process is peaceful. This is a P&P rally. Yeah, they're very excited. The national flag, let's see. The Jamaican flag bears a diagonal cross, dividing it into 4 sections. The upper and lower sections are green, the left and right sections are black, and the cross is gold. It is generally believed that the gold symbolizes sunlight, the green symbolizes the island's lush vegetation and abundant farmlands, and the black represents the hardships faced by its people. Here is the Queen talking to Patrick Allen, the Governor General, at the time of this photograph. Here's the Queen speaking to Parliament. This guy is voting. This is Portia Simpson Miller, the first female Prime Minister of Jamaica, standing for the national anthem. Here is Kingston. And a little map. Look at this very convoluted, very busy city, isn't it? Interesting. These are the different parishes of Jamaica. Let's see, what are we growing here? Banana leaves, it says. He's pruning banana leaves. Banana leaves are used to wrap food, kind of like tamales. Let's see, they are harvesting some coffee beans in the Blue Mountains. Here's a resource map. I can see lots of things growing in the valleys, and up in the mountains it's more mining. That's for bauxite, gypsum, salt. Carrots is talking about how elementary schools grow their own vegetables for the kids. Bauxite mine. And let's see, they're cooking. I was going to say it looks like Brussels sprouts, but they're Scotch bonnet peppers. Here's their currency. And this lady's getting a health checkup. Beautiful beach. This is in Montego Bay. Reading the newspaper. And of course the cute kids. There's always cute kids in these books smiling so wonderfully. Except her. She seems a little uncertain. Everyone else looks very wonderful. Aww. This is a tower. Oh, it's from a cathedral in Spanish Town. Preparing for an inspection. Very, very formal and official. This guy is of Chinese descent, but he is Jamaican. There's a market. And this is some of the slum areas of Kingston. Here's the population map I was telling you about. Incredibly populated island. not a lot of empty spots around there. Working hard in school. A Taino statue. Very cool. This is a synagogue. So, during Spanish control, a lot of Jewish people from Spain moved to Jamaica to kind of, escape Spain and the persecution they were facing. And also a lot of refugees from World War II came to Jamaica, to the Jewish communities on there. So it's a small community, but it's there nonetheless. They were the only Spanish left when, like I said, the Spanish all left when the British invaded. Literally the only people left on the island were the freed slaves, the Maroons, and the Jewish population. Looks like she's having her first communion. And this guy's getting baptized. And these are Rastafarians. A very interesting belief, I think. Really cool. And this is depicting Obeah, which is an African spiritual belief mixed with some Caribbean influence. Kind of like witch doctors, basically. This is a storyteller. This is Louise Bennett Coverley. There's another picture of her, a very beloved storyteller, poet, author, what have you. She's loved by everyone in Jamaica. Claude McKay, another famous poet. This is a really cool statue. It's by Edna Manley. And this is a neat painting too. Look at those details. It's by Ebony Patterson. Jimmy Cliff. And of course, Bob Marley. I'm going to do a whole biography video about Bob Marley. I'm not really into reggae music. I find it kind of repetitive, but it's still very beautiful. And Bob Marley had such a very meaningful, powerful life. I can't not do a video about him. Whole family together. Oh, it says this picture's from New York. This is a boy from Jamaica getting his citizenship. Talks about weddings. He's making jerk chicken. Yum, 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 yum. Oh, here's some food wrapped in banana leaves. These are blue drawers. A boiled pudding treat wrapped in banana leaves for cooking. Some fried plantains. And cricket is a very beloved sport in Jamaica, left over from its British times, I suppose. There's some dancers. It's at an independence festival, it says. And there's Usain Bolt, the fastest man alive. He is, of course, Jamaican. So many runners from Jamaica. This is the Maroon community during a celebration. And another one. Big drum circle, it looks like. At a festival. Very, very colorful. And some even more adorable. So cute. Oh, look at that smile. Oh, and that's the end of our book tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I have a lot more videos about Jamaica coming for you, so look forward to those. I hope you found this video relaxing and educational, and I hope that you have a very good